Hello there, good evening, and welcome to the Dice Towers Daily Chat. My name is Eric Summerer. I hope you're having a lovely day. Thank you to everybody who's joining us live in the chat. And for those of you who left the Fantasy Flight in-flight report, I hear, if I'm following the chat, that they were having some technical difficulties, and it will be available later on. So as far as I know, no Merchant of Venus expansions announced, but it could still happen. You never know. I hope you're having a lovely day today. This is the first time I have done this solo for the Dice Towers daily chat. Yeah, I am in a tiny window because I guess I could make this bigger somehow. It's because of this overlay thing that I'm dealing with. If there is anything that you'd like to ask, be sure to do so in the chat. I am happy to talk about not just board games, but anything else you want to talk about. If you want to talk about audiobooks, I'm sort of in that general mode today. I was recording a book about Lassa fever, which is a particularly virulent disease in West Africa. There's a memoir of somebody who went to combat and learn more about that. So very, very heavy stuff. I'm looking for something maybe a little lighter. I'd like to read like a nice lit RPG to sort of cleanse the palate after that one. But if we don't have too many questions, I can always tell some stories and stuff. Did someone in your family make the quilts behind me? Let me check. I think this one may have come from my mother-in-law, but this one, I don't know where that came from. These are behind me because it's sound deadening. This is my voiceover studio, and the neighbors like to mow their lawn while I'm trying to record, and so we've put these up to try and push some of that out of the room. It doesn't necessarily work. When they're like right outside the window, you can still hear it, and that's sort of annoying. But that's what happens. And sometimes we just have to take a break and come back after they're done. Oh, that's a nice question. Gator Dave wants to know what got me into the audiobook narration industry. I was being a Muppet didn't work out. That's the short answer. The long answer is that when the Muppets didn't work out and I wasn't able to really make a contact there and become a Muppeteer, I started interning at a radio station, and that led to more work with the radio station. And when you work at a radio station, you do a lot of voiceover work. You have to do like the promos and the commercials for the radio station. And I really enjoyed doing that and started looking for more jobs outside of that. So I started doing some corporate narration and getting some side jobs, and eventually left the radio station so I could pursue voice acting full time. And that led to making auditions and taking seminars and getting a demo together for audiobooks. And it just happened to be at the right time that Audible was looking to expand their roster. And I happened to be there at the right time and did well enough that they hired me back. And now I've been doing it for, 15 years. 2005, I think, was my first audiobook. And that is kind of crazy. But that's right. It's been 15 years. Wow. A few other questions coming out already. You guys are really already throwing stuff at me, which is great. Is there such a thing as you reading for pleasure, or is it completely a work thing at this point, says Kabuki Kid? I do occasionally force. If there's a novel that I really want to read, I will sometimes make time to do it. Like the new Hunger Games book, the Hunger Games prequel, Song of Snakes, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it's called. And so I made sure I made time to read that one because I really wanted to find out what happened in the past in the world of the Hunger Games. But it's not often that I get to do that. Usually when I'm reading, it's for prep for work, and I don't really get a choice in what I can always say no to a project, but usually I'll say yes to just about everything and give it a whirl and just see what comes out of that new book project. But most of my reading is definitely for work at this point. Eric, what is your favorite non-parody Weird Al song? Says Doodle. Let's see. I feel like I have a ready answer for that. But then I feel like I'm going to miss something that's a favorite. I really like his non-parody songs. I think they're really strong. You Make Me is one that I really like. There's another one I'm sure that I'm missing that's definitely standing. And Fun Zone, the instrumental from the UHF movie, is also a favorite. It was my theme song for my college radio station, or my radio show in college. It was the Amazing Interns Fun Zone, and I played the Fun Zone track. How many books do you record per year? It ends up averaging, because some books are short, some are longer, and I'm looking at my calendar right now. It ends up being about one a week, and then I'll take a few vacation weeks. And although I'm doing a lot less traveling this year than I would in other years, so it's probably 45 or so, 45 to 50 books, depending on the length. Sometimes, like I did one that was a full 2 weeks of one book, and those certainly take a lot longer. Do you follow any Kickstarters? Asks Tracy. And yeah, a few. I was, like many people, sucked into the Come On Marvel United campaign recently, and I'm anxiously awaiting that game. I think it's going to work well with my kids, so that's one that I picked up, and I went with the 2-wave shipping so that I could get the base box and play through that some, and then be surprised and delighted when the new stuff comes, when we're ready to get more out of it. I think the other Kickstarter that there's a couple. I'm thinking of the updates I've gotten lately. There is a game about knitting called Arch Ravels that I have backed that's supposed to be shipping in November. It's my wife is a knitter, and so I thought it would be one she would enjoy playing with me. I recently backed Pulp Invasion, which is a sci-fi that uses art design of classic sci-fi pulp novels, which looked kind of cool. It's a bag builder. And there's one other. Oh, the Mint Cooperative is the other one that I think is still floating out there. Oh yeah, and there's a video game I kickstarted like 8 years ago from the two guys from Andromeda crew. What is it called? Space Venture, I think is what they're calling it. And I backed that a long time ago, and I don't know when or if it's ever going to deliver. So that one, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that one anymore. Let's see. We have lots of folks talking about Merchant of Venus. That's always good. A friend of mine used to work on Sesame Street, says Kabuki. I also worked on Sesame Street for a very short period of time over the summer. Right before my senior year in college, I worked on, I worked in the home video department. So they were, producing anything that went straight to video, basically. But their big production that year was Cinderelmo, which was Cinderella told through the Sesame Street characters. And I got to be there for like the last wave of script revisions, the pre-production meetings, and actually the production week of that, which was filmed at Kaufman Astoria Studios, where Sesame Street is. So I got to sit on the Sesame Street steps and explore, see Big Bird's nest and stuff. It was awesome. Don't make Eric feel bad. It's nice we can actually ask him some questions. Oh, well, yes. What is the story with the wiener guy behind you? This is a puppet from Henson Alternative, Stuffed and Unstrung, which is an improv show that uses puppets. It's a bunch of Henson puppeteers, including Brian Henson is actually one of the rotating cast members of that. And they, it's like Whose Line Is It Anyway, or any other improv show you've seen, except they've got a wall of puppets, and they do their various sketches, and it's very funny. And they sold that at the gift shop. The merch booth sold hot dogs, and so that's what I brought home. That's my souvenir. When can we expect a new Top 100 from you? That's a great question, Kabuki. Soon. Yeah, I want it to be soon. I have the list. The list is complete, and I've tabulated it, and it is in position. And the problem is that we're having work done in the house, and most of my games had to be packed up in boxes to allow them to be moved more easily and get them out of the way of the work people. And we actually have a storage unit out in front in the driveway, one of those portable ones. And so in order to film the top 100, I'm going to have to sift through those boxes to do it, which I think will be fun. It'll be like a scavenger hunt. It's just I have to focus the time to actually make it happen. I know I said it was supposed to be June. It is no longer June. And I've apologized profusely to Tom, but it is supposed to happen soon. I also need to get my kids to help and try and figure out how they're going to do their thing with it, because that's always been our thing, is getting the kids to sort of join up with me on that project. But as the kids have gotten older, it's less cute. Like, it used to be my eldest son that I would put in front of the microphone and have him read all the names, because he wouldn't read them right, and you'd get these adorable mispronunciations. I think I'm giving that job to my younger son now, and he's a little nervous about it. Like, it's this balancing act, because I want him to mispronounce a couple, but I also don't want him to freak out, and be nervous and uncomfortable doing it. So it's finding where the kids are happy participating, because I do want them to be involved. But yes, short answer is soon. Do you choose what you read for them? Asks Elena. I'm assuming that's for my audiobook work and not my kids. My usual process when I get a book is that they simply send an email and say, "Are you interested, and does it fit in your schedule?" And I look at it. Rarely do I say, "Yeah, no, I don't think I want to do that." But I guess in theory, there might be subject matter that I'm not comfortable doing, or a particular, like if they said that the main character was French, and I would have to speak in a French accent the whole time, and that there were half a dozen other French characters who spoke French a lot, I would say no to that, because French is my kryptonite. I can maybe throw something out in a pinch. If it's like a single line, maybe. But if I was once, the only time I ever had to start a book and then back out of it was when the main character was French, and I thought I could figure it out, but we were Google translating phrases, and it was the most frustrating day in my professional life. And I had to write back to the client and say, no, that's not happening. So usually that doesn't happen. And I say, yeah, that works with my schedule. Let's do it. Let's book it. Occasionally there is an extra layer where the author gets say on who is reading the book. So it will be something that I'll be submitted, and they'll send maybe half a dozen or maybe just a handful of narrators to the author, and they pick one. Sometimes I do a little short 2-3 minute snippet. You'll read the first 3 pages of the book, something like that, to give them an idea of what I would sound like if I were to read that. Let's see, lots of questions and conversations coming in. I know I'm way behind. If you could only play board games that start with the same letter for the rest of your life, which letter would it be? I almost have to wait to answer that until after I finish the top 10 lists, the alphabetical ones. I mean, the pat answer would be M for Merchant of Venus, just so that I could get that in there. S does seem like a really good, I mean, just for sheer numbers, S seems like a good answer for that. But I would have to go back and look at the top 10s from those letters to get a real sense of that answer. What is the most recent really good TV show or movie you have seen? I'm always on the hunt for something new and good to watch. Oh, golly. I mean, there's so much that you can consider good. I've been watching a lot of like late night comedy. I like Seth Meyers and The Daily Show. But that's not really anything new. That's been around for a while. I really liked Watchmen. The HBO production of that was very interesting and confusing at first, but I really appreciated where it went. That was a really solid production that I really liked. What have I seen lately? Oh, golly. I don't know. Everything, this is that weird time vortex thing that we're in, that just everything just sort of blends together. Got an adorable story about how you and your better half met, from Gator Dave. I mean, I guess it's adorable. So my wife and I both went to Syracuse University, and we were in the honors program. And one of the elements of the honors program was this seminar. It was called Arts in Society or something like that. And the idea was that for one semester, you would go to this weekly discussion seminar. And then like 5 times throughout the course of the semester, you would travel to some sort of art production or installation around the city of Syracuse. So we went to the Syracuse Symphony. We went to see a play at the Syracuse Stage. We went to the Art Museum. What else was there? We had to go to a student performance at the music school and the opera. Oh, yes, we went to the opera. And my wife, my future wife at that point, was in that seminar. And I kept trying to come up with excuses to talk to her. And eventually, once we did strike up a conversation and then we started hanging out more often, we were dating for the class. Like we started dating to go on these excursions. And so we were dating for credit when we first met. And it turned out just fine, as you can tell. What's up with the tight shot? I don't know. I mean, okay, hang on a second. We can try and make it bigger. Let me fiddle for 1 second. And we'll go like this. Hey, hello. There. How's that? Is that better? We'll try that. Am I remembering correctly that Eric voiced a character in the Forgotten Waters app? I did not. That would have been fun, but I think I haven't listened to the Plaid Hat podcast, which is great that show is back. I haven't listened to the podcast episode where they talk about the voicing of Forgotten Waters, but I believe they have some local folks, almost a troupe of voice actors in Texas where they're located, and it's just easier for them to do that. They wanted, I think, a full cast of characters, and I've voiced other stuff for them, and I think they've been happy with that, but they didn't. They went a different direction for Forgotten Waters. Do you have any sports ball teams that you follow? I do not, really. Maybe the closest thing is USA Curling, but that's not really a sports ball team. That's, Olympic competition is very different from like standard sports. The closest, I guess, simply by association is going to be the New England teams, so the Patriots and the Red Sox, because my in-laws follow them. And therefore, they've gotten my kids interested in them. And so if I had to lean one way or the other, I'll be like, oh, yay, go Patriots. But that's about as much enthusiasm as I will muster up for a sports team. Let's see. Well, everybody's just chatting amongst themselves. Oh, yeah, talking about the Mint games. I really like the Mint games. I haven't played the demo of Cooperative yet, but I think that will be fun. I like Mint Delivery. I've enjoyed Mint Works, but I don't own that one. But I like Delivery. And I generally like pick up and deliver games. This kind of reminds me somehow of Being John Malkovich. Yes, maybe if I had slowly zoomed in throughout the course of the production, that might have worked. Yes. It's simply that this is set up for a 2-shot, and I could just go with a full screen. You know who I am at this point, right? I'm sticking with this. Have you played Marvel United yet? No, I have not. I'm waiting patiently for my copy. I was not one of the lucky ones to go, I'll wait. I don't need to go to Walmart. I guess they've closed that particular loophole right now. But there was the time that you could get it at Walmart for a short period of time. But I'll wait. I have plenty of other things to play. And in fact, I sort of joked about it on Twitter that my eldest complained about playing too many new games recently. He said, "Dad, why do we always have to learn new games? I know you have to play new stuff for the podcast, but maybe I could just, play something I know." Like, okay, fine. What are some favorite bands or artists that you enjoy listening to when you want to listen to music? No, not counting Weird Al. Okay, fine. I really enjoy soundtrack albums. I love film scores. Back when I was on the radio, I did a Film at 11 segment. Every day at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we'd play film music, and I sort of curated that collection at the radio station. I enjoy listening to those. I enjoy listening to a cappella music. I like covers. I know that it's sort of the cliche of a cappella bands because they're always making up new arrangements of stuff. But I like to hear how a new artist or group interprets something that exists already. So I like it when you get a bunch of a cappella artists together and they do a movie theme or they do a pop song, and you get to hear how they've twisted it and made it their own thing. So a lot of my listening is that. I'm not a big current popular music fan. I couldn't tell you actually any top 40 artists right now, but I do really like film music and a cappella music. Who would win in a fight, Voltron or the Dino Ultrazord? Oh, which is the Megazord plus Dragonzord plus Titanus. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think by height, that Dino Ultrazord would probably win. But theme song's tough. For a long time, I thought that Power Rangers were just dumb. But, I mean, I kind of like that theme song. It doesn't beat the Voltron theme, though. If you're going purely on groove of the theme song, I have to say Voltron's going to win that. I have not yet listened to an audiobook read by you, says Goofy. Do you just read them or do different voices for all the characters? Yes, there are different techniques. So yeah, there's sort of two different philosophies. And then it's really a spectrum, but there are some narrators and some listeners who want to just hear someone reading the book. Just read me the words and I will come up with what's happening. And again, I'm talking about fiction, not nonfiction. Nonfiction, I pretty much read straight. It's very rare. In fact, the Lhasa book that I'm reading right now, there are characters in it. There's conversations, but I have deliberately held back on, doing any sort of extreme character work or accents, or I'll maybe just put some in a high register, low register, do a little bit of diction just to be able to tell them apart. But I don't really do characters for nonfiction books. But for fiction, some narrators just read it straight, and some listeners want them to read it straight. I don't want my imagination colored by your interpretation, Mr. or Ms. Narrator. My philosophy, and one that other people enjoy, is that you should be able to tell who is speaking based on what I'm saying. Even if I don't say he said, she said, even if I don't say the name of the character, if it's in a room and you know who's generally going to be talking, you should be able to tell who's talking. And that is, that's the way I like to play and narrate. So if you were to pick up one of my books, you definitely would hear the character voices and I try not to get too crazy. I don't want it to sound like a cartoon, but my rule of thumb is you should be able to tell who's talking and keep the characters separate when they're having a conversation. Usually there are two people. Eric is just centered right now. Yes. Now I'm bigger. Eric, have you performed with puppets, operating or even just voicing? Yes. I for my senior thesis film, after I had done that internship with the Muppets and Sesame Street over that summer, I was making a student film called Felt Ambition, in which I played several puppet characters, and it was a story about this retired vaudevillian puppet trying to break back into show business. It ended up way longer than I ever intended it to be, and it's a little hokey, but it was fun, and it gave me some good practice. And we got like a one of those gurneys that you use for auto repair that can get you under a car, and so we had one of those, and I would be leaning back, holding up my arm, and I'd be mic'd, and so we allowed the characters to walk while I'm scooting around on this little gurney thing. It was a good time, and that was supposed to lead me to audition material that I could then send to Henson and try and break into the Muppeteer crew. They don't hire a lot over there, and I never got anywhere. I made friends, I made contacts when I was interning at Henson and at Sesame Street, but it just didn't pan out, and eventually I needed to eat. So I went another direction. I misread puppets as puppies. That's different. Let's see. Since speaking is your job, what words are your hang-ups when it comes to pronouncing them properly? Ooh. What were some speaking mistakes you had to work on? I'm still working on some of these. There are some words that I just have trouble with when I run into them. Any of the PSY words, psychology, psychological, or physical, like it's whenever it's like physiological, psychological, anytime one of those words comes up, I sort of have this, I can see it coming on the page, and I have this mental panic, like, okay, here it comes, read it correctly this time, and no matter what I do, I always read the wrong one. The same thing happens with started and stared. When I see either one of those words, for whatever reason, I always get the wrong one. Because they often, like narratively, when a character is about to do something, they will often stare meaningfully into the distance, or they will start on whatever journey it is. It's just a matter of whether they've paused first or not. And the way I read and process stuff as I'm about to talk, I try and see it in like whole phrases and with an understanding of what is happening in the book. And so I will make those stupid mistakes, which if you look at the word stared or started, and you can tell which one is which. But anyway, that's one of the ones that gives me trouble. There are words that, in fact, I've talked about this on the podcast, mischievous. And I always read it as mischievous, although I got a letter from someone at Merriam-Webster that mischievous is a valid pronunciation of the word, but I've been corrected enough times that it's now mischievous. But there are words, all sorts of words that you've just read, like visually, and until you have to say them out loud, you don't necessarily know if you're saying them right or not. Have you recorded any old classic books? Yes. So in my early career, a lot of when Audible was first, really expanding their productions, the back catalog of all of these famous authors had sort of opened up. Somebody said, well, we've got all of this material that we can also make into audiobooks. Maybe there aren't audio versions of these, and we can record them. And so they got a bunch of their narrators to record these back catalog things. So I got to do some Kurt Vonnegut. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater is read by me. The first book I ever did was Ken Kesey's Sometimes a Great Notion, which was the book he wrote after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was very daunting. It was like a 600-page book. It took me 24 hours of narration in the studio, I believe. That's a lot. And unfortunately, they don't have that anymore. It's someone else recorded it. That happens sometimes, like the version that exists right now then gets replaced or re-recorded by someone else, and they've taken down that old one. But I was recording a lot of classic sci-fi, some old school stuff with some really cool ideas. There was one called Dark Universe, where all of the characters had been trapped in a cave for so long that they no longer had a function or a sense of the sense of sight. They existed using echolocation. They had like a little chirper speaker in their civilization, in their village, that bounced sound waves off of everything, and that's how they saw, which is actually a concept that non-sighted people have. They can use this Doppler sort of echolocation, and it was a fascinating book. So yeah, I enjoyed some of those classic ones. If you could record any book, what would you choose? The first time I read Ready Player One, I immediately ran to see if it was recorded as an audiobook, which was sort of silly. Like, of course it was. It was a brand new hit, bestseller. But I went and checked, and of course it was Will Wheaton that recorded that. And Wheaton! But that's fine. It's fine. Have you read any books published by Bean, B-A-E-N? I actually have. There is, I don't know if the first volume is out. I just finished Interstellar Patrol Volume 2, which is a collection of stories by Christopher Anvil. And a lot of pulp sci-fi stuff. Interesting. But I just finished Volume 2. I think Volume 1 is out. And those were originally published by Bean Books. You have 2 hours at home, alone, with no work or house duties. What do you watch? What do you watch? Well, I think I would play a game. I'd crank up the PS4 and play Dragon Quest if I had no other responsibilities. I am still in the middle of Dragon Quest 11, and I definitely have fallen into that rabbit hole. I've just finished the main quest, but the Dragon Quest games don't finish. They're not over after you beat the big bad. There's still more to go, and so I'm just opening up into that phase. So I would probably, that's what I do. I'd crank that up and play that. As soon as I finish Dragon Quest, I'm getting back to Zelda, because I haven't finished Breath of the Wild yet, and my eldest is on his second run through and has passed me again. So that bugs me. Are you ever asked to read a book straight? Is that no longer a thing anywhere? Do you always have to do some form of acting or voices when doing readings? I'm usually not told to tone it down, but on occasion I've been told, there was one book where the author told me to read it as fast as humanly possible. He wanted a sense of urgency in the book. And so I was constantly like, okay, am I going fast enough? I really have to go. And if I go too fast, I make too many mistakes. But if that's what the author wants, and there have been sequences in other books, the Sleepy Hollow books, the Jason Crane series that I read, which I am delighted with the final product on them. The author was very demanding on those. And I would do a sequence that I thought was perfectly fine, and he'd come back and say, nope, you missed the point. I need to feel like I am in danger, and I need, he wanted an emotional reaction out of certain passages of the book. But that's the exact opposite of what Kabuki is asking. That's more acting, really. I'm not really told to go back. I think the emotional connection concept is definitely the norm. Although there are narrators out there that will do a much more straight reading. Hi, Crystal. Crystal just showed up. Or she probably showed up a while ago because I'm way behind on the chat. Tom hates on Merchant of Venus. Give us your best sales pitch. You've heard these before, right? It is a pick up and deliver game in space. And you get to upgrade your ship and fly around and explore, and it's so fun. Tom doesn't like it. He doesn't hate it. But the reason he doesn't like it is the one time I played, he found every relic in the game. He found all this stuff that made it so easy for him to fly around and destroy me. And so he just went to town, and he's like, this game is easy. I don't understand what you like so much about it. So yes, that is that's my sales pitch, and that's why Tom doesn't like it for some reason. Let's see. I have lost. Sometimes the chat jumps, and I see Roy Canada has shown up. That's cool. Favorite movie scores and themes. I think for a long time, my favorite is still the Lord of the Rings score. The Howard Shore stuff from the Lord of the Rings movies. That is just a solid soundscape of so many wonderful themes, and I still hum those. For a long time before Lord of the Rings came out, it was Star Trek First Contact. The opening credits to Star Trek First Contact are so good. So good. As the fog, the credits are like fading into the fog in the opening sequence, and I love it. Good stuff. How about a soundtrack? So non-score soundtrack. Karate Kid. I want to say Back to the Future, but that's mostly score. There are some, you got Power of Love. You got the Huey Lewis stuff for Back to the Future as well. Plans for Gen Con online. I actually am not planning to do much for Gen Con. I may pop in on a few things, but I don't have any obligations. I'm not running any panels or on any discussion forums or any of that. But I really should pop in on something and feel like I'm part of it. But it's hard. I mean, we had a great virtual con. I'm wearing the t-shirt. Actually, I've zoomed myself out of it. But virtual con was fantastic, and I loved participating in that. But I just didn't. Once Gen Con physical was off the table, I sort of filled that time with, work tasks and family tasks. And so I haven't, it's not as much on my radar as it would be if I was traveling to Indianapolis. But I should really pop in and do something. I'm certainly following the news as people are announcing things and on their Twitter feeds and stuff like that. So I'm getting a little bit of the excitement. Coralu asks, as Roy Canada has popped in, has Eric played your game yet? No, but we're hoping to remedy that after the show today, believe it or not. Let's see. Any chance you could throw the questions up on the screen? Yes, I can, although Roy is much better at doing this. I've never figured out how to make this happen. So if I were to throw something on the screen, it would just show up in the middle of... This is probably not what I want to do. I'm not reading the chat on the computer that is running the stream. I'm reading it on a different computer, and I'm actually at different points in the chat. So, no. I would like to, but I don't know. He's got him like in bubbles, and I don't know how to make that happen. Yes, folks talking about Childhood's End, which is another classic sci-fi, and that's the only one that's been nominated for an award. I was nominated for an Audie for Childhood's End. What board games are your kids currently into? Asks Roy. Let's see. What are they pulling? So my kids have been going to Grandpa camp these last couple of weeks, and so they brought some games with them. My youngest enjoyed playing the Zorro dice game, which is a brand new one from Pull the Pin Games, and I'll be talking about that on the podcast this coming week. I'll be recording that tomorrow. But my eldest brought along a few things. He really likes Dizzle, the roll and write game from Stronghold. He has brought that to a few things. He played some Transamerica on that trip. What else has he been hauling around? Stop Thief is, I think, pretty much his number one. This is my 12-year-old. He loves that, and he loves being the one against many. He wants to be the guy that hides. So that's definitely high up there. But there's lots of stuff that they're willing to play. Your true thoughts about Roy and Mike, honestly. All right, honestly, they are both wonderful people. I've enjoyed working with Roy on Dice Tower stuff, and he is such a diligent worker in getting all those behind-the-scenes things together. When we did the awards show a few weeks ago for the Dice Tower Awards, Roy was so on top of it and put that thing together, and it looked gorgeous. And Mike, I've worked with Mike in the booth more often than I've worked with him in a Dice Tower production standpoint. But Mike was always a fantastic worker in the booth, and I've hung out with him for many an hour at an Origins or a Gen Con, and always they're both delights, by gum. Where is Felt Ambition filmed? It was filmed, and there was a time that Syracuse had it on some sort of streaming service that they had within their system. It is not something that I think I could put up on anything. There are clips, I think, that have existed somewhere on YouTube. My production partner put up some clips at one point, but it wasn't something that was distributed in any sort of meaningful way. It was a student film. We didn't get music clearance for the music we used, so it's technically not legal because we used music clips and stuff that we shouldn't have. That's why you can't get it. I would be an outlaw if I were to send that out there. Have you seen the Tested.com video where Adam Savage got to make a Muppet with the Avenue Q puppet creators? I have not seen that, but that sounds fun. I mentioned working on Cinderelmo. A good portion of the original cast of Avenue Q was on Cinderelmo. Rick Lyon, Stephanie D'Abruzzo, and John Tartaglia were all original cast members of Avenue Q, and they were on that production, and I hung out with them and had conversations with them. And then when I went to see Avenue Q and went to get autographs after the show, they didn't remember who I was. So that's fine. I made a real impression. What is your origin story as the dulcet tone of the Dice Tower? Well, Tom likes free labor. Yeah. I offered to help. I entered a contest. I was a listener of the Dice Tower podcast and entered a contest. And, what do you need? I had recently left my job on the radio, and I was starting my job as a voice actor and not terribly busy. So I had all of this equipment. I had a booth. I had recording software and microphones, and I offered to use them for Dice Tower stuff, and Tom said, yeah, great. So we did those silly sketches and comedy bits, and I started doing the intro and outro to the podcast, and then when Sam left Korea, Tom needed a co-host, and I was the natural choice. I don't want to say obvious choice, but I was the one person most involved in the production of the show at that point, and Tom took a chance on having me be part of the show. What is your backup plan if you ever lose your voice and you're on a deadline? There is no backup plan, Coraloo. If I lose my voice, we stop. And I've had books where I have I did one. It was a Dungeons and Dragons book, and I stopped for the weekend in a weird place too. I usually like to stop at the end of a chapter when there's like a major break in time or space, but we were on a time crunch, something like that. We went as far as we could, and We stopped in the middle of a scene, more or less. And when I came back to record on Monday, I had caught a cold. And I did not sound the same as I did on Friday. And I tried. I, would record a little bit, and then we'd listen to them back to back. And it was very obvious that I no longer had the strength of voice that I had the previous recording session, and it was terrible. I couldn't do that. There is no backup plan. And all that happens is I have to apologize profusely to the client and rearrange everything in the schedule to try and make it up and work weekends. But the best thing to do at that point is to rest and get my voice back. And it took a week to get back to where I was when that happened. So no, there is no backup plan, which is why when I do go to conventions, I have to wash my hands a lot, and I carry that hand sanitizer a lot, and really, do my best to not, and go to bed early. That's the other thing. If I stay up too late at a convention, then I will also end up in not a good vocal position on Monday. Eric had a nasally voice until that day when his vocal cords fell into a puddle of toxic waste. Yes, that's the origin story right there. I sounded like this before. Can you do an accent for almost any part of the U.S.? Pretty close. I'm sure there's specific areas, like, when you get into the difference between Tennessee and West Virginia, then, yeah, I can't get quite that granular. But I'm relatively familiar with the U.S. accents. But then the alternative is you ask me to do some UK accents, and whereas a British resident would know all the, they could do a Glaswegian no problem, that one's going to give me more trouble. Folks talking about Cuckoo's Nest and Ken Kesey. How long can you go on narrating before the voice starts to go? The voice lasts longer than the brain. I can go about 4 to 5 hours is about my limit. And I will also take a lunch break. Temperature plays a big part. As it gets warm in the afternoon, it will often slow me down. I'll be making more mistakes. But it's fatigue in my brain that knocks me out before the voice goes. I'm usually still unless I'm ill. As long as I keep drinking and and stay in a good place and good health, then I can continue narrating for a while. I've been doing that for a while. But I at some point after I've been going 4 hours or so, I start making way too many mistakes to make it worthwhile, which is why I try and measure out my recordings so that I know what my quota needs to be, how far I need to get in a given day in order to complete the book by the deadline. And I will, once I reach quota with maybe a comfortable margin of, an extra 5 or 10 pages, I'll be happy to finish, because it's better for me to rest and come at it strong the next day than it is to push. Do you think Will Wheaton ever watches The Dice Tower? Who knows? Maybe. He certainly knew of us in the couple of interactions that I've had. Me personally, I've only interacted with Will a couple times, but I think he knows who Tom is for sure. There's a new Muppet show. Yes, that's very true. I have not watched it yet, but it got an okay review in Entertainment Weekly, so I need to give it a whirl and try it out. I was one that liked the Muppets, the Office comedy show. I think they really started to hit their stride, but general consensus was to abandon it at that point. So I'm a little disappointed. And Muppets Tonight was so good. That was such a great show. Oh well. Does it annoy you when people listen to audiobooks at 2 times speed? Yes. Because I mean, it's their book. They can do what they want, and I understand completely that time is a resource that we are all very short on, and so same with podcasts. It is a lot easier to get through stuff if you're listening at double speed. But for somebody who my whole world in that box is pacing and mood and emotion, and when I take a pause, it's for a reason. And to think that somebody's plowing through that, it hurts a little. But that's okay. It's their book. They can listen to it that way. Oh, Kabuki says a friend was hired to do the audiobook for The Devil Wears Prada, and she went in never having done it before and was shocked to learn that they wanted her to basically act all the parts. She thought that you just read it straight. There are a lot of things that you just have to sort of pick up through listening to other narrators and or taking seminars or but there is a tremendous amount, almost a scary amount of agency on the part of the narrator. There's no director with any sort of. I work with an engineer, and in this pandemic time, we are communicating on Skype. So I'm listening to her in the headphones. She is following along on her version of the script and making sure I read everything correctly. And so she has input on what I do. But as far as how I make these characters sound, it's my decision. And unless something is way off, my engineer isn't really going to say anything. She's much more concerned about my consistency and my accuracy and, making sure I keep everything straight. But as far as like me trying to gauge what the author wants out of this production, I can have a conversation if the author is still with us and talk to them about how they want these characters to sound. But ultimately, the way I do it is my choice. And there are certainly higher budget productions where there is a director in the room or online that is going to listen to the narrator. I have not worked that way. So usually it's all me. And if I make some horrible mistake, it's my horrible mistake that needs to be corrected. You're the best around. Nothing's going to ever keep you down. So this is how far behind I am in the chat, because this is when I was talking about the soundtrack to Karate Kid. Let's see. Lots of folks talking about Karate Kid. Yes, indeed. Where do you get your love of puns from? Inherited from a parent or reading, etc.? I want to say it's the pretty obvious answer is it's stolen from Car Talk. I always loved listening to the end of Car Talk and the silly puns that they used. Although they tended to use the same string of them every episode, whereas for whatever reason, I have to keep finding a new one each time. And again, for those who don't know, that is not all me. I curate which ones end up on the shows, but not all of them are mine. In fact, many come from a thread on Board Game Geek, which is something long and unwieldy, the title of it. It's something like, make Eric stop using puns on the podcast by suggesting every possible one that exists, which is really the suggestion thread for puns on the podcast. Have you ever seen Meet the Feebles by Peter Jackson? I have not. I know it exists. I know what it is, but I have not. Yeah, that's not going to do it. I have not seen it. I still have nightmares about that movie. Oh, Meet the Feebles, apparently. Do you have any home remedies to strengthen your voice if you are sick or have a cold? So there is a point at which you can't do anything and you just have to get better. There is lemon water, which is something that if I'm feeling stressed and I'll usually do coffee in the morning because I need the caffeine, and then I'll often switch to warm lemon water. Just boil some water and then add some lemon juice and some honey. And that'll be my afternoon beverage for the afternoon session. Oh, somebody ordered Childhood's End. Thank you. That's great. I get nothing for it at this point. I've been already paid for that. So the only D&D books I ever really enjoyed were the Dragonlance books, and that was back in the 80s. I think the ones that I read were also from the 80s, maybe early 90s. The series I read was called Songs and Swords by Elaine Cunningham. I really enjoyed them. And there are some of the, it's Danilo Than and Errolyn Moonblade are the main characters in that series. And I really liked that one. It was fun. I've done some Pathfinder books as well. Those weren't quite as standout, but it was very entertaining. Would you share with us your best old man with an old golden retriever sitting on a porch rocking and a salesman shows up voice? Let's see.
Well, it's quite a lovely day when... what? What do you... Now, son, no. Now, I don't know. No, I'm not interested. Now, you listen here. This is my house. Do not take that attitude with me, young man. No, you... Get a sick 'em, boy.
Do you have some sort of insurance on your voice? Drink some water right now. I will, Roy. I should. I keep talking, and so I wasn't hydrating as well as I should. I appreciate that, Roy. Do you have some sort of insurance on your voice? I do not. I know that is a thing. It wouldn't be a bad idea when you get into that circumstance where you can't talk for a week. There is probably some mechanism for paying out in that circumstance, but it is not something I have explored, but it is probably something that I should explore. I skipped ahead again. How did that happen? Sometimes I try and scroll and I end up at the bottom of the list. That is not what I wanted to do. When you read, is it completely digital at this point, or do you sometimes get paper books to read from? I used to. When I first started, I got paper books. They would send a FedEx package with a Xerox copy of the book. They had copied every single page so that every page was on a single sheet of paper. Lots of paper. And I'd have to do that page turn thing where I'd be looking at 2 pages at once, and then when I'd make a mistake, I would have to, rearrange the pages so that I could go from the bottom of one page to the top of the next page. But if I was really doing an excellent job and I made it through a whole 2 pages without making a mistake, then I would literally have to stop because you can't have that page rustle sound in the recording. Yeah, now it's on an iPad, which is much quieter, and I can do highlighting in the iAnnotate program that's on the iPad. Has there ever been an audiobook with multiple narrators? Oh, yes. That is called a full cast recording. It is basically a different genre, but there are definitely full cast recordings. A lot of the pop culture stuff, you'll get like Marvel, or Doctor Who, or stuff that's made to sound like a radio play, that will end up being full cast. I am suddenly realizing that it's almost 10 o'clock, and I should just find a couple more questions to answer, and we're going to call it a night, believe it or not. They're all talking about other stuff. There's... Any chance you'd consider doing more family game reviews? I really appreciated your family's review of Stuffed Fables. That sounds like a good one to stop on. That would be fun. I need to find one that they are also passionate about. And I'm not sure any of them have landed quite as well as Stuffed Fables. Part of that came because... Plaid Hat wanted us to make a video. They paid us to make a playing Stuffed Fables with your kids. So that was actually a production that we put together for them. But I'm sure there really could be, and maybe that is how I get them involved in the top 100 this time, is when there's a game that they are passionate about, because people have heard me talk about some of these many times, but they haven't heard necessarily my kids do so. That might be how I can get them involved a little more. When one of their favorites shows up, they can talk about it with me, which would be fun. But it would be nice to do more family reviews. I do try and talk about how well something works with my kids on the podcast, but it's it's something that as far as a video review goes, would require me to do more video reviews. Never say never, but it is something that I would enjoy doing. I think we're going to call it a night. I know I am behind on the chat. If there's anything that you really want me to talk about, or a question you want to ask in the future, feel free to ask it on a future chat or on a Dice Tower Tonight. I'll be at this very same spot in 2 weeks, or no, in 1 week. 1 week with Crystal Pisano, and we will be doing a Dice Tower Tonight right here. And you can ask your questions there, or you can send those into the podcast if you want Tom and me to talk about them there as well. We'd be happy to do that. But for now, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you very much for joining me. And there are more daily chats on the horizon right here on the Dice Tower channel. But until then, good night, everybody.